Welcome back to TaraElla Report LvCT, Liberalism versus Critical Theory. In this new series, we will explore the differences between the critical theory worldview and the liberal worldview. Last time, we talked about why critical race theory and critical theory in general are inherently revolutionary and anti-liberal to some extent. At the end of the last episode, I briefly discussed how there are different levels of CRT and how an academic and nuanced approach to CRT might still be compatible with liberal commitments, but a politicized and revolutionary approach might not be. Today, I want to expand on this point. CRT is based on a set of assumptions, including the idea that racism is ordinary and pervasive in America and several other Western countries, and that the political system in these countries are inherently unfair towards non-white people. Therefore, it is often said that in CRT, the question being asked is not, is racism present in this scenario? Because it is always assumed to be present. Rather, the question being asked becomes, how is racism being present and affecting this scenario? I think a critical distinction that needs to be made here is whether the central assumptions of CRT are being presented as hypothesis or fact. As a liberal, I believe in being open-minded in our search for the truth. As such, I welcome people coming up with and exploring all sorts of hypotheses. This is why I'm so passionate about free speech. What I cannot accept, and what many people cannot accept, is when hypotheses are being treated as facts, without adequate objective evidence to conclusively prove the truth. This is especially concerning if such truths are being used to develop solutions to cure social ills. Think about this. You would expect your doctor to be practicing evidence-based medicine. Why shouldn't we expect those proposing social change to practice evidence-based politics? This brings me on to the next point. CRT, indeed all of critical theory, started out as academic theory. As some might say, the core assumptions of CRT might be controversial and might not always be true, but it remains a useful lens to do research and thinking around. I have no problem with the existence of CRT as a lens of academic inquiry, as long as we remain very aware of the limitations of the products of such academic inquiry. In the past, I've also raised concerns regarding the balance between criticalist perspectives versus other perspectives in contemporary academia, but that's another issue. If the insights from academic CRT are taken with awareness of the limitations and in balance with other perspectives, then the results might not always be incompatible with liberal commitments. What and I suspect many people, have a problem with is the popularized and politicized form of CRT. What I mean by popularized and politicized CRT is where ideas from CRT thinking, like colorblind racism, the pervasiveness of white supremacy, intersectionality, and so on, are taken out of the academic context and applied in popular culture, political debates, and especially the culture wars. Unlike academic CRT, this form of CRT is much less nuanced. After all, when doing academic work, one is generally encouraged to think about the strengths, weaknesses, and limitations of one's work. However, in politics, especially in the culture wars, no such requirement applies. Indeed, such reflexivity is often seen as weakness in the face of the enemy. Thus, politicized CRT is much more dogmatic, much more rigid, and often incompatible with liberal commitments to individual level equality, free speech, freedom of conscience, and so on. Therefore, it is justified, even for liberals who are otherwise okay with academic CRT, to be concerned about CRT-type ideas being applied outside a university setting. An even more worrying trend in recent years has been the adoption of CRT and associated ideas as part of a wider revolutionary agenda by those with a revolutionary as opposed to reformist political orientation. In this new revolutionary adoption of CRT, the assumptions of CRT are taken as fact, and indeed as justification for the need to overturn the current system. Furthermore, in extreme cases, any opposition to CRT could be painted as upholding white supremacy, a view essentially justified on the grounds of Foucauldian postmodern philosophy rather than objective reality. Now, this would indeed be the opposite of an evidence-based approach to resolve our social ills, and I truly fear where such a misguided approach will lead us to. That's all for today. I'll be back next time to discuss another big idea. Remember, on this show, the personalities don't matter, it's the ideas that matter. Interest in an individual's ideas does not mean support for all the other ideas. Until next time, remember to resist conformity and stay positive. Our future depends on it.